Alright, so tonight we have something very, very special for all of you viewing in. And it's something that I promise you have not experienced before. And it's something that you're going to be very, very happy to hear. So what is it? I'm going to make you all wait with me just for a little bit before we get to it. So I like it. It's like a Christmas, you know, in my house, in the house I grew up in, Christmas presents didn't get opened on Christmas Eve, they got opened on Christmas morning. And on the house my wife grew up in, Christmas presents got opened Christmas Eve. So when we started having children and mixing our two families with our families, and it was quite interesting. So I always like the little additional suspense. So we're going to keep a little additional suspense here and ask all of you to stick with us. What I'd like to build up to it with is a little bit of a background understanding of Lord Chaitanya's mission. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was receiving letters from two brothers who were residing in Ramkeli. Those two brothers, of course, were Dabrikash and Shakir Malik, soon to be Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. They were requesting him, you must come and save us. So eventually Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his way to Ramkeli. And eventually he met with the two brothers. Not necessarily did everything take place right then. He then met both of them a little bit later in other locations and gave them very detailed instructions about the principles and the development of Krishna consciousness. And very particularly, he gave some instructions to the two of them. Specifically, the highlight of those instructions was to write books about the science, about the art of Krishna consciousness, devotional service, bhakti yoga. This was what he specifically wanted. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that his mission was not to spend a great amount of time on this planet, and was not to produce vast amounts of literatures. So he had disciples he empowered for that purpose. At the head of that, of course, were Rupa and Sanatan. In that group also, Jiva Goswami, Lokanath Goswami, like that. So these devotees were all writing different literatures. Now, of course, then we know they were all retiring in Vrindavan, not retiring, but living in Vrindavan and working very adamantly with this. And then a second wave, if you will, of followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came along. And the prominent amongst those was Srinivasacharya, Narottama Das Thakur, and Shyamananda Pandit. These three studied under Jiva Goswami, who was considered to be the most prolific, having written more books, more verses, more information than anyone else. And having a great understanding of how to give that to the common person. So Jiva Goswami instructed these three boys, who became great, great friends, Srinivas, Narottama, and Shyamananda, in the science of Krishna consciousness. And then upon the request of Mother Janavamata in Bengal, and the desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he additionally did was instruct these three boys that they should take these books and take them to Bengal for distributing these books. As a matter of fact, to the gurus of each of these three, Lord Chaitanya appeared at different times and told them, through Rupa and Sanatan I have written these books, but through Narottama, Srinivas, Shyamananda I will distribute these Bhakti Shastras. So not only did he want the Goswamis to write them, he wanted them to be distributed by a second generation, who would also then in turn write their own books. And then we follow that down. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, most recent in our historical timeline, if you will, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote so many literatures. Those literatures were written for the purpose of elevating mankind. Otherwise, why did he send his famous book on Lord Chaitanya to McGill University, all the way around the world on the other side of the planet? Additionally to that, he instructed his own son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as we've mentioned just in recent times, was an amazing mind. Understood very, very clearly from the age of 7, had the entire Bhagavad Gita not only memorized but could explain it. And in his culmination devotional service also produced many literatures. But his greatest contribution was what he called the Brihat Mridanga. And that is the printing press for the purpose of giving these literatures more. And then our own Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, wrote an amazing amount of works in an amazingly short time, specifically for the purpose of uplifting mankind. So we have this line that we're coming in, encouraging the production of literatures on Vaishnava topics. As early as 1972, Srila Prabhupada wrote to his disciples that they should be writing books, that he expected that they would also take up the task of writing books, because this was such an important and essential principle in this age of Kali Yuga. Of course, not to be surpassed by the chanting of the Holy Name. Of course, the chanting of the Holy Name is the most important principle. It is the reason why Kali Yuga is glorified. Otherwise, why would Kali Yuga be glorified? Such a decadent age. Unlucky, unfortunate, unhappy, unconscious. These are all the descriptions the Bhagavatam gives in the principle of Kali Yuga. So this Kali Yuga has this wonderful benefit of allowing people to very quickly advance. But Lord Chaitanya, when he came, he didn't come directly as an incarnation of Krishna. There's a very interesting story. I was listening to one lecture by one of our senior devotees this morning. And he, are we checking this? Radha says the sound and the video aren't in sync.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Oh, okay. I'm going to interrupt right here because we seem to have a little bit of a technical problem here. Those of you that are having any difficulty, we can just encourage that you refresh your browser, because we did have to stop at the beginning and then restart just to get our sound balance right. So if any of you are having any problems, since we stopped, I'll welcome a couple of our regulars here. Mauricio, good to have you on board again. Says he just made it home. I hope he didn't get a ticket, Mauricio. And then Surfer Bob, nice to have you back with us. Nice to have you back with us. And of course, Bhakti and Carol and Kartik. Very good to have our usual crew. So that's our answer to your technical problems there. All right, so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not come as an incarnation of Godhead. It's described in the Vedas that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Tri-Yuga. Of course, Tri meaning three, Yuga meaning ages. So he appears in 3 ages. The Bhagavatam details in both the early part of the Bhagavatam and in the 11th canto as well the different colors and incarnations of the Lord like that. But it's not accepted that he appears in Kali Yuga. Doesn't appear in Kali Yuga. But yet we know that in Kali Yuga, the personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Actually, I'll tell you a very quick little side story on that. We know, those of you out there that may know a little bit about the Sanskrit language, Agdotin or Hindi, whichever, Agdotin, this is 1, 2, 3. So Satya Yuga is considered the first age because it's the golden age. And then Dwarpa Yuga, Dwa, 2, would be the second age. And Treta Yuga, Tre, 3, would be the third age. And then Kali is the winter age, the last age, the iron age. But we see that in this Yuga we're in, it's Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and then Kali. So it appears to be a little backwards. There's actually a very nice explanation for this. When the universe was being created, Lord Brahma manifested the 7 sons, the 7 sages. And to each of these 7 sons, he gave different responsibilities. You take care of this, you take care of that, you know. He's a good manager. Prabhupada said the best intelligence is lazy intelligence. Because a lazy, intelligent person sees everything that needs to be done and engages others in doing it nicely. So Lord Brahma is very lazy intelligent. He's got so many heads, he figures everything out, and he manifests different personalities to carry out these things. So the last of these sons was Vashishta Muni. So he said, my son Vashishta, I'm going to give you the responsibility of overseeing and giving the direction on all the yugnic homas, all the hotra performances, the fire ceremonies and sacrifices like that. And so Vashishta is a very good son, and with less than considerable enthusiasm, he said to his father, okay. Now those of you that have children, when your son or daughter, you ask them to do something, they go, okay. It's not a very enthusiastic response. So Lord Brahma said to him, my dear Vashishta, what is the concern? So Vashishta said, well, he said, the yognic priest has to take a portion of the karmic reaction for these things. Therefore, all these people are doing these things for mundane activities, so Inarayan puja and this blessing and all, and I'm going to, I don't really want to, isn't there another job you can give me? So Lord Brahma, being very intelligent, the creator of the universe, he said, actually, all the other jobs have been given out. This is all there is. He said, but you're such a sincere son, and you're taking this on even regardless of the not such desirous enthusiasm. What I will do is arrange that in the Treta Yuga, when Lord Vishnu appears as Ram, the most perfect example of a human incarnation of the Lord, you will be the family priest. And you're, as the family priest of that dynasty, once you complete those responsibilities and that pastime of the Lord is finished, then you'll be relieved of all these obligations for the yajnic activities. So Vashishta Muni said, okay. Once again, not so enthusiastic. Lord Brahma is very intelligent. He said, I can understand that you're not exactly pleased with this. What is the reason? He said, well, Treta Yuga is a long time. First there's Satya Yuga, then there's Dwarpa Yuga, and then there's Treta Yuga, and I have to wait so long. Lord Brahma is very intelligent. He said, all right, for this particular set of yugas, we will swap the two. Treta will come first, Dwarpa will come second, and then in that way you can very quickly be the guru to Ramchandra and then finish your business. So this is why in the cycle of yugas that we are living in, the Treta and Dwarpa are changed. But regardless of that, Tri Yuga, only in 3 yugas do we see the personality of Godhead manifest. So the sages, there were 3 sages once, and these 3 sages were debating amongst themselves as sages do. It's a very common thing. Actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, those of you familiar, in the early part of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentions in a purport that one is not considered to be a Muni unless he creates a new angle, a new perspective, a new idea about a particular philosophy. So these 3 sages are debating and arguing and talking back and forth and trying to figure this and that. And the first one says, Satya Yuga is the best of all ages. This is the golden age. There's no sinful activity. And the second one says, no. Dwarpa Yuga is the best of all ages. Dwarpa Yuga is so perfect. One can become, just by the performance of worship. And Treta Yuga, and then the third sage says, no, it is Treta Yuga. Treta Yuga is the best of all 3. So they're arguing back and forth like this. And it becomes a very heated discussion to say, all right, we will resolve this by going to the authority. That authority is Vyasadeva. So they go to the Himalaya mountains. Now, interesting thing, because they're sages, they're very advanced in mystic performance. Maybe they walked to the Himalayas because they wanted to take the time, or maybe they just, Prabhupada gives the example of how some yogis can dip underwater in one place, and when they come up in the water, they're in another location. And I don't mean a few feet downstream. Maybe go in Prayag and come up in Vrindavan, something like that. So yogis can do these things. Yeah. So at any rate, they came up in Badrinath. Now, I've had the good fortune to go to Badrinath, which is in the foothills in the Himalayas. And just outside Badrinath, though not so far, is the cave where Srila Vyasadeva resided, and still resides to this day in his mystic form. So the sages went there, and they waited for opportunity to have the darshan of Vyasadeva. So they presented before him. They said, Srila Vyasadeva, we're here to inquire from you which of the yugas is the best yuga. Is it Satya Yuga? And the sage said very proudly, Satya Yuga, or Treta Yuga, or Dwapara Yuga. Srila Vyasadeva listened to their question, and very specifically he said, let me inform you, it is Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga? How can that be? They said. Kali Yuga is the worst of ages. So much sinful activity is there. The people are very unfortunate. They have no intelligence. They have no memory, so on. And so he explained, because in the Kali Yuga, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in a covered form. But the process that he brings, and the process that elevates the conditioned living entity, is the simplest. And what is that? Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, Kalu nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranita. Kalu, in the age of Kali, nasteva. No other way is as beneficial. There's also a very nice verse here that's from the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, and is quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. Very, very famous verse. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. Krishna Varnam Tivaksharinam, Krishna Varnam Tishak Krishnam Sangopangashtraparshtaram Yagnai Sankirtana Prayar Yajantihi Sumerasa. In the translation, in the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead who constantly sings the name of Krishna. That, of course, being Lord Chaitanya. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. Now, there's two reasons why I mention this particular verse. One is because it confirms that in the Kali Yuga, the fourth Yuga, the personality of Godhead appears. And the second, because it gives the importance of his confidential companions. We have spent some 30 weeks now speaking about the confidential companions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And these confidential companions are important for us. Some of the times we have found it to be more difficult than others due to a lack of information available. And for some of them there is a vast storehouse of information available. One such personality that we do have a vast storehouse of information available on is Narottama Das Thakur. Now, Srila Narottama Das Thakur has written many songs. Many books have been written about his activities, and he is the subject of many different books. Prem Vilas, Narottam Vilas, Bhakti Ratnakar. He's a prominent personality in the pastimes given in Bhakti Ratnakar. So, Narottama Das Thakur, there's a lot of information about. When Srila Prabhupada encouraged that his devotees should write, he wanted not that they should make up something new, but that they should write about the information that is already given, that they should write about the previous philosophy that is given. There are two styles of writing. One style is a very historical, very philosophical type of presentation. The other style is a type of, what's the word I could use, a novelization, if you will. That's probably not the correct word, and actually I'm not even sure if it's even a real word. But to take the subject matter and give it a particular form of presentation that makes it very palatable. Prabhupada also appreciated this style of writing. And that's what we have tonight. All of this first 20 minutes has been building up to this. And I have tonight a unpublished manuscript of a book that we're tentatively calling A Life of Devotion, the story of Narottama Das Thakur. This is written by my god sister, Srila Prabhupada's disciple, Sitala Devi Dasi. And it's a work that is just wonderful. I had the good fortune just this recent trip to Vrindavan to spend quite a bit of time discussing the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas with her. She was part of an old ISKCON project many years ago that was responsible for collecting all types of old information, documents, and so on and so on and so on and so on, and then trying to do something with them and preserve them and in different ways present them. And at any rate, for some reason or another, that project never continued. But it gave her the basis for writing this, and she has written this book. It is a book done in novel form about the life of Narottama Das Thakur. And I had the good fortune here again to be in the presence of Mother Sitala herself, His Holiness Indradumna Swami, and His Holiness Bibi Govinda Swami in front of the deity of Brajmohan, Radha Brajmohan, one of the six and the first of the six deities installed by Narottama Das Thakur at the Khitri festival, and read this in public before those deities. So, with Mother Sitala's permission, I've been able to secure a copy and been given the approval by her to read this to you all. Now, of course, this is some, well, I don't know, what do you figure it by, 500 pages? So we're not going to read the entire thing tonight. But I am going to make this a little insert from time to time over the next period of weeks, that we do stop and read this, that we, maybe one night we'll read this, maybe we'll do, like next weekend, we have quite a few, of course, as we approach Gaur Purnima, we have quite a few appearance and disappearance days coming up, and we may revisit some personalities we've spoken about already. But for tonight, we're going to read from this book. And let me warn you ahead of time, this book is spiritually emotional. Mm-hmm. It invokes sentiments of appreciation for the life of Narottama like you've never experienced in your life. So without any further ado, Life and Devotion, the story of Narottama Das Thakur. Part 1. Lord Chaitanya's prediction. Chattering monkeys scampered through the trees, gawking curiously at the group of bright-faced devotees jubilantly singing the holy names of the Lord. The kirtan party slowly wound its way through the lush green countryside, their sweet melodious chanting echoing through the thick canopy of palm and coconut trees. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Losing themselves in the joy of kirtan, the devotees chanted with full absorption, their voices brimming with devotion. In the center of the devotees, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced, his radiant golden body swaying gracefully to the beat of the pulsating drums. As they walked, the mridanga players quickened the beat. The brass kartals chimed in time, flashing the morning sunlight. Powerful waves of ecstasy surged through the kirtan party as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu raised his long, graceful arms and began leaping into the air. Radiant with joy, the devotees surrounded him, dancing with wild abandon, their bare feet pounding the soft ground, raising clouds of dust. Suddenly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped dancing. Standing motionless, he stared intently into the distance and fervently called, "Narottama! Narottama!" His body trembled with tears. His body trembled, and tears flowed from his eyes with uncontrollable force. Overwhelmed with ecstatic love, he grabbed onto Nityananda for support. But then he collapsed to the ground and rolled in the dust, all the time crying, "Narottama! Narottama!" Bewildered by the Lord's sudden outburst, the devotees stopped singing. Glancing at each other with uncertainty, they gathered around the Lord and sang the holy name softly, waiting for his ecstatic trance to abate. Kneeling on the ground, Sri Nityananda Prabhu whispered sweet words of pacification into the Lord's ear. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, simply threw his arms around the neck of Nityananda and continued to cry. Worried, Sri Nityananda Prabhu turned to Vakreshwar and Haridas. I've never seen him shed such profuse tears. Hoping to revive the Lord, Vakreshwar led the devotees in loudly chanting the names of Lord Jagannath. With this, the Lord regained his composure. Sitting up, he wiped the tears from his eyes and motioned to Lord Nityananda to come closer. "Nitai, You know that Sankirtan is very dear to me. It is everything to me. It is my very life. I want everyone in this world to taste the nectar of the holy name. But soon, you and I will depart from this world. Who will keep the flame of love that I have brought into this world burning? Before I leave, I must empower someone to carry on this wonderful Sankirtan movement. I have such a wealth of love, God. I must leave it with someone. But who is qualified to inherit such riches? My lord, said Nityananda softly, you know everything. Only you can answer that question. Is there anyone capable of carrying on your mission? Who is worthy of inheriting your love? Yes, Nitai, there is someone. His name is Narottama. Narottama? Nityananda Prabhu questioned. Who is Narottama? Just a few moments ago, you were calling his name and crying so hard I feared for your life. But I do not know anyone named Narottama amongst your associates. Narottama has not yet appeared in this world, the Lord replied. But soon he will take his birth nearby, on the other side of the Padmavati river, in the town of Keturi. Narottama will be such a wonderful devotee that every word coming from his mouth will be filled with the love of God. If I leave my love with him, it is certain that the ocean of Sankirtan will continue to spread and flood the entire universe into the future. Puzzled, Nityananda inquired, but if Narottama has not yet taken his birth, how will you give him your love? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled. Tomorrow I shall enter the Padmavati river and place my love there for Narottama to receive in the future. At the appropriate time, you must guide Narottama to the bank of the Padma river to collect the divine treasure awaiting him there. The Lord understood. The Lord stood up. Nityananda understood, and they resumed chanting. That evening, the devotees spoke amongst themselves in hushed voices. Everyone was curious. Who is Narottama? Who is this Narottama that the Lord is called out for? No one except Nityananda had the answer, and he was keeping it as his confidential secret. You can just appreciate the picture that this style of writing about the life of Narottama paints. When you hear these, you can actually, in your mind's eye, see the scene as it's taking place. So this is why this type of writing style is very, very wonderful method for presenting the pastimes and the lives of the Vaishnavas. Continuing on. The following morning, the kirtan party moved slowly along the sandy footpath, chanting and dancing as they sang the holy name. As they reached a clearing in the trees, the vast, deep blue water of the Padmavati river came into view. At the river bank, Nityananda Prabhu turned to the devotees and stopped the kirtan. Watch carefully, he said to them. Something extraordinary is about to take place. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to place his divine love into the Padmavati river. Sometime in the future, this love will be given to the devotee Narottama. The devotee stood along the shore, watching curiously as Sri Chaitanya submerged his lotus feet in the water and slowly waded forward. To their amazement, the placid river began to swell with joy. Transformed by the touch of the Lord, the water of the Padmavati river appeared to dance gleefully, swirling and gurgling as it rose rapidly higher and higher. Within moments, the river overflowed its banks with ecstasy, spilling its water onto the shore and gushing onto the land. All at once, an extraordinarily beautiful woman rose from the waves. She stood before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with folded palms. Her silken garments shimmered in the breeze, and her jeweled crown sparkled in the morning sunlight as she humbly asked, My lord, how can I serve you? O goddess of the river Padmavati Devi, Mahaprabhu said, I want to leave my transcendental property in your care. Please take my love of God and keep it with you until a devotee named Narottama comes to bathe here. At that time, you must deliver this love to him. Yes, my lord, she said submissively, but how will I recognize Narottama? When a young, dark-complexioned boy who is filled with love of God enters your river, causing your water to surge forth and flood the land in the same way it is done today, you will know that is Narottama. But my lord, she questioned, if this boy has so much devotion that his touch will cause me to overflow with ecstasy, even before he has received this divine treasure from you, what will his condition be after receiving this treasure? Do not worry, the Lord interrupted. Narottama will sustain my love. When he comes, you simply give it to him. Quivering with joy, Padmavati Devi took the love of God from Mahaprabhu, offered her obeisances, and disappeared back into the waters. The devotees observing this exchange stood with their mouths agape and their eyes wide in astonishment. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turned to them and calmly instructed, begin kirtan. News of this miraculous event quickly spread throughout the land. Devotees everywhere waited eagerly for Narottama's appearance in this world, each of them hoping for the opportunity to meet such a special devotee. Amazing. Part 2. Youth. A prince is born. The sun rose over the palm trees, lighting up the village of Keturi in Bengal. As the warm rays of the sun streamed through the window of his palace, King Krishnananda Dutt sat silently, worshipping the family deity. Picking up a handful of tulasi leaves, he gently placed them at the Lord's feet, thus completing the puja. Then, staring intently at the deity, bowing his head and folding his hands, he humbly pleaded, My dear Lord, if you so desire, please bless our family by sending us a son. The king offered his obeisances and walked out onto the veranda. Surveying the capital of his small kingdom, his heart swelled with pride to see the well-kept villages, the homes surrounded by gardens, overflowing with fruits, vegetables, and grains. Ah, what a paradise! The soil in Keturi is so fertile, practically anything grows here. Krishnananda's gaze swept across the horizon. As far as he could see, everything was bright green. The lush countryside was covered with thick clusters of banana, jackfruit, mango, and coconut palm trees. They spread their deep green foliage beneath the bright blue sky. Taking a deep breath, he savored the exquisite fragrance of numerous varieties of flowers wafting in the morning breeze. It is truly a blessing to rule over such an opulent place, he reflected. I have everything a man could want: land, wealth, a devoted wife. The Supreme Lord has certainly been kind to me. But Krishnananda's brow furrowed slightly as he mused. All these blessings cannot fill the void that I feel in my heart. Without a son, my home appears empty and lifeless. To whom shall I turn over my kingly responsibilities in my old age? And how can I pacify my good wife Narayani, who suffers greatly without a child to nurture? Krishnananda shook his head sadly. I know I am certainly too old to entertain such thoughts, but I just cannot give up the desire for a son. Heaving a deep sigh, he turned from the window. Well, I mustn't waste my time daydreaming. The Supreme Lord knows that my wife and I are anxious to have a child. We must wait to see what is his desire. Krishnananda sat alone in his chamber, reflecting upon village affairs. His thoughts were interrupted by the loud voice echoing through the room. Soon you will be the father of a son named Narottama. This boy will shower the earth with love of God. Stunned, Krishnananda looked up, around, in all directions, but found no human form to match the extraordinary voice. Spellbound, he waited expectantly, but the voice said no more. What? Am I in my right senses? He whispered to himself, doubting the reality of what he had heard. Did I really hear that voice? Or was I merely dreaming? Am I a victim of delusion, imagining good news? Krishnananda shook his head as if shaking off doubts. No, he assured himself emphatically. I definitely heard a voice. It was not a dream. My eyes were open, and I am fully conscious. What I heard could be nothing other than a divine prophecy. Krishnananda's heart leapt to think that his desire for a son might soon be fulfilled. He hurried to share the news with his wife. A few days later, Narayani burst into her husband's chamber early in the morning, her face flushed with excitement. Prabhu, last night I dreamt that an extraordinary person came out from your body and entered into mine. This must be another omen that we are to have a son. Said Krishnananda. Your dream confirms the voice of the oracle I heard the other day. But don't raise your hopes too high. Whatever the Supreme Lord ordains, that we must accept. Yes, Prabhu, she said, and quietly left the room. Neither of them mentioned the omens again, but they could not stop their minds from dwelling on the prospect of having a son. Shortly after this incident, Krishnananda was relaxing in his chamber when an astrologer paid him an unexpected visit. Always a gracious host, Krishnananda welcomed him. Well, come in, my friend. Make yourself comfortable. I'll have the servant bring you a cool drink. Let my wife come and let us hear something about our future. The learned Brahmana drank his juice and then sat cross-legged on the cushion provided. He silently made many complicated calculations. The king and queen anxiously awaited. Then a bright smile broke out on the astrologer's face. Oh, this is wonderful!